Hey everyone, I'm Mono Scaling. I'm here to guide you today. If you use this video to drift off to sleep, please tap like, hit subscribe, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. Now get comfortable and relax. Story 1. My name is Jason Miller. I woke up to bones laid in perfect circles around my RV. They weren't there when I slept. I'd been parked at the Juniper Springs campground in Ocala National Forest for 3 days. The RV was a 1998 Fleetwood Bounder I'd bought off Craigslist for $6,000, white with teal stripes, rust spots on the wheel wells, a toilet that only worked half the time. It was March 2019, and I was 2 months into what my ex-wife called my breakdown, and what I called getting away from a job that had turned my insides to concrete. The morning I found the bones, I'd slept through my alarm. My phone said 9:47 a.m., which was late for me. I usually woke at dawn, made coffee on the 2-burner stove, and sat outside watching the palmetto scrub turn gold in the early light. But that morning I'd slept hard, dreamless, the kind of sleep that feels like you've been erased. I opened the RV door in my boxers and t-shirt, stepping barefoot onto the metal stairs. That's when I saw them. The bones were small, bird bones, rabbit bones, maybe possum. They formed 3 concentric circles around the RV, each about 2 feet from the next. The outermost circle had the largest bones, femurs, and rib cages. The middle circle was vertebrae and smaller pieces. The innermost circle, closest to my RV, was just tiny bones. What I guessed were finger bones, toe bones, the delicate architecture of skulls. They'd been cleaned. That's what struck me first. No meat, no cartilage, nothing rotting, just white bone against the dark Florida soil. I stood there for maybe 5 minutes trying to make sense of it. The campground was mostly empty. It was off-season, and the few other sites I'd seen occupied were spread out among the pines and live oaks. The nearest RV was maybe 100 yards away, a newer model with Tennessee plates I'd noticed when I'd driven in. I got dressed and walked the perimeter. The bones didn't look placed randomly. They'd been set down with care, each one oriented the same way, tips pointing inward toward my RV. I counted 63 bones in the outer circle before I stopped counting. The campground host's trailer was at the entrance, a quarter-mile walk. I didn't go. I don't know why. Maybe because I'd been trying to avoid people, to stay in my own head and work through whatever needed working through. Maybe because I knew how it would sound. Someone put bones around my RV in the night. Like I was paranoid. Like I was cracking up worse than Michelle said I was. Instead, I took pictures with my phone. Then I spent an hour collecting the bones into a garbage bag. They were light. Hollow. My hands didn't shake until I was almost done. I threw the bag in the dumpster near the bathhouse and tried to forget about it. The couple from Tennessee introduced themselves that afternoon. I was draining my gray water tank when their truck pulled up, and a woman in her 50s leaned out the window. "You know if there's a dump station nearby?" she called. I pointed toward the campground entrance. "Half-mile that way, can't miss it." She smiled. Her husband, a heavy-set man with a Titan's cap, nodded his thanks. They didn't drive off immediately. The woman kept looking at me, and I realized I probably looked like hell. I hadn't shaved in a week. My hair was getting long, and I'd been wearing the same jeans for 3 days. "You doing all right?" she asked. "Fine," I said. "Just needed some time away. We're the Harpers, Linda and Tom. That's our Winnebago over yonder." She gestured vaguely. "You ever need anything, you just holler." I nodded, told them my name. They drove off, and I finished with the tank. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the bones, about how quiet it had been when I'd slept through their placement. My RV wasn't soundproof. I could hear acorns dropping on the roof, could hear the far-off sound of traffic on Highway 40, but I hadn't heard anything. At 2:18 a.m., I gave up and made coffee. I sat at the dinette with my laptop trying to work on the freelance coding project I'd picked up to pay for gas and campground fees. The work was simple, mindless. A small business in Tallahassee needed a website update. It should have taken me 2 hours. I'd been stretching it out for 2 weeks. I heard footsteps outside around 3 a.m. Not animal footsteps, human ones. Deliberate, measured, circling the RV. I killed the lights and moved to the window. The campground was dark except for a few scattered solar lights along the main road. I couldn't see anyone, but the footsteps continued. Crunch, crunch, crunch on the dried pine needles and leaves. They stopped directly outside the door. I waited. My heart was doing something erratic, skipping beats. I'd had anxiety attacks before, full-blown ones where I thought I was dying, but this was different. This was pure animal fear. After maybe 30 seconds, the footsteps resumed. They circled the RV twice more, then faded into the distance. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. When dawn came, I went outside to look for tracks. The ground was too dry, too covered in debris. I couldn't find anything definitive, but there was something new, carved into the bark of the live oak nearest my sight. A symbol. 3 circles, one inside the other, with what looked like rays or spokes extending outward from the center. It hadn't been there yesterday. The cuts were fresh, sap still bleeding from the wounds in the bark. I met the 3rd camper 2 days later. His name was Marcus Webb, and he was younger than me, maybe 30. With a rust-colored van he'd converted himself. Solar panels on the roof, mountain bikes on the back, Colorado plates. He'd parked 3 sites down from me. I ran into him at the bathhouse. He was shaving at one of the sinks, a straight razor in his hand, and he looked up when I came in. "Hey," he said. He had an easy smile, the kind of person who made friends without trying. "You the guy in the old bounder?" "That's me." "Nice rig, classic." He rinsed the razor. "How long you been here?" "About a week." "Thinking about staying long?" "Haven't decided." He nodded like he understood. "I'm doing the same thing. Just driving, seeing where I end up. Quit my job in Denver back in January. Best thing I ever did." I didn't tell him I'd been fired, that I'd had a screaming match with my supervisor that ended with me throwing my laptop against the wall and walking out, that Michelle had filed for divorce 3 weeks later, saying she couldn't do it anymore, couldn't watch me destroy myself. We talked for a few more minutes. Marcus said he was planning to explore the Juniper Springs run, maybe do some kayaking. He seemed like a good guy, normal, the kind of person who wouldn't leave bones around someone's campsite. But when I got back to my RV, there was something on the door, a handprint, small, child-sized, in what looked like dried mud. But the fingers were too long, the palm too narrow, and it was positioned too high, at least 6 feet up. I washed it off with a rag and bottled water. My hands were shaking again, architected escalating horror narrative with pacing, character arcs, and psychological realism. I need to continue building tension while staying realistic and grounded. Let me think about the pacing. I'm at about 200 words, need to reach 800 words should introduce more strange events. Build toward someone going missing, coming back wrong. Include the Harpers and Marcus as characters. Maintain psychological realism. Add the protagonist's trauma, past, subtly. Escalate the supernatural elements gradually. Next scenes, more interactions with the other campers. Additional strange occurrences, GPS issues, time anomalies, supplies problems. Someone goes missing, maybe Marcus. They return, changed escalation to violence, possession, horrifying climax, ambiguous, traumatic ending. The Harpers invited me to dinner that evening. Linda appeared at my door with a casserole dish in her hands, smiling that same warm smile. "We made too much," she said, though I could tell it was a lie. "Tom grills enough chicken to feed an army. You like jambalaya?" I almost said no. I'd been eating canned soup and peanut butter sandwiches for days, and the idea of sitting with other people felt exhausting. But something about the handprint had rattled me more than I wanted to admit, and the thought of spending another night alone in the RV made my chest tight. "Sure," I said. "Thanks." Their setup was nicer than mine. Matching camp chairs, a portable fire pit, string lights hung between the trees. Tom was loading chicken onto paper plates when I walked over. Marcus was already there, sitting in one of the chairs with a beer in his hand. "The gang's all here," Tom said, handing me a plate. "Marcus was just telling us about Colorado. Says he's from Fort Collins." We ate and talked about nothing important. The weather, good camping spots, the best route through the Rockies. Normal conversation, the kind I hadn't had in months. It felt good for about 20 minutes, and then Linda asked the question I'd been dreading. "So what brings you out here, Jason? You mentioned needing time away." I kept it vague. Said I'd been working too hard, needed a reset. Didn't mention the panic attacks or the insomnia or the way I'd started having thoughts about driving into oncoming traffic just to make the noise in my head stop. Marcus seemed to sense I didn't want to elaborate. He steered the conversation back to his van conversion, showing us pictures on his phone of the build process. Tom asked technical questions about the solar setup. Linda refilled drinks. It was almost normal. Almost enough to make me forget about the bones and the footsteps and the handprint. Then Marcus's phone started acting up. He was mid-sentence, swiping through photos, when the screen flickered. The images twisted, pixelated, then resolved into something that made him frown. "That's weird," he said, turning the phone toward us. The photo showed his van. But in the background, barely visible in the shadows between the trees, there was a figure. Tall, thin, humanoid, but wrong in proportions. The image was blurred like Marcus had moved while taking it. But the figure was sharp, in perfect focus. "I don't remember anyone being there when I took this," Marcus said. He swiped to the next photo. Same thing. The figure was closer now, standing just behind the van. "Probably just a hiker," Tom said, but his voice lacked conviction. Marcus kept swiping. In each successive photo, the figure was closer. By the last image, it was standing directly beside the van, its hand reaching toward the driver's side window. The photo was too blurred to make out details, but I could see the fingers. Too long, too many joints. "I'm deleting these," Marcus said. His voice had changed, gone flat. Phone's been glitching all day anyway. Nobody argued with him. The dinner broke up soon after. We all claimed we were tired. Tom and Linda cleaned up quickly, and Marcus headed back to his van. I went to my RV and locked the door. I didn't sleep. I kept thinking about the figure in Marcus's photos, about those fingers, about the handprint on my door. At 4:47 a.m. I heard the screaming. It came from Marcus's site, high-pitched, ragged, the kind of scream that meant real fear. I grabbed my flashlight and ran outside in my boxers and unlaced boots. Tom was already there, standing outside Marcus's van in his pajamas. Linda was behind him in a robe, her face pale. The van's side door was open, interior light spilling out. Marcus wasn't screaming anymore. He was sitting on the floor of the van, knees pulled to his chest, rocking back and forth. His eyes were wide, unfocused. "Marcus," Tom said. "What happened?" Marcus didn't respond. He kept rocking. I climbed into the van. It smelled like sweat and something else, something organic and wrong, like meat left in the sun. Marcus had claw marks on his arms, deep enough to bleed. I could see he'd done it himself. There was skin under his fingernails. "Marcus," I said quietly, "can you hear me?" He stopped rocking. His eyes focused on me, and for a second, I saw recognition. Then his expression changed. His mouth opened, and he made a sound I'd never heard a human make before, somewhere between a laugh and a choke. "The circles," he said. His voice was rough, damaged. "Did you see them? The circles?" "What circles?" Tom asked. Marcus pointed at me. His finger was shaking. "Ask him. He knows. He's in the center." "I don't know what you're talking about," I said. But I did. The bone circles. The symbol carved in the tree. 3 circles, one inside another. Marcus started laughing. Not normal laughter. Something broken and terrible. Linda backed away from the van. Tom put his hand on my shoulder. "We should call someone," Tom said. "He needs help." I climbed out of the van. My flashlight beam caught something on the ground near the van's rear tire. More bones. Not in circles this time, but arranged in a line pointing toward my RV. "I'm calling 911, Linda said. She was already walking back to their Winnebago. Tom stayed with Marcus while I went back to my site. The sun was starting to rise, turning the eastern sky purple. In that pre-dawn light, I could see something I'd missed in the darkness. The trees around my RV. Every single one had the symbol carved into it. 3 circles radiating spokes. Some of the carvings were fresh, some looked older, weathered. But they formed a perimeter around my site, maybe 20 trees in total. I'd been camping in the center of something without realizing it. The police came around 8 a.m. 2 sheriff's deputies in a marked SUV. They talked to Marcus, who had calmed down but kept insisting he'd seen something in his van, something that had touched him. The deputies were polite but skeptical. They suggested he might have had a reaction to something, drugs, alcohol, a medical episode. Marcus didn't push it. He nodded, said maybe they were right, said he'd been stressed lately. But when the deputies left, he came to my RV. "I'm leaving," he said. "Like right now. And if you're smart, you will too." "What did you see?" He was quiet for a long moment. His hands were bandaged where he'd clawed himself. "I woke up and it was in the van with me, sitting right there." He pointed to where I was standing. "It looked like, I don't know, like someone had made a person out of the wrong materials. The proportions were off, the smell was wrong, and when it saw I was awake, it smiled." "Did it say anything?" "No, it just reached for me. I started screaming and it left. Crawled out through the ceiling somehow. I know that doesn't make sense, but that's what happened." "The bones." "I don't want to know," Marcus interrupted. "I don't want to understand. I'm leaving, and I'm not coming back to Florida ever again." He packed up in less than an hour. I watched him drive away, his van kicking up dust on the campground road. The Harpers left that afternoon. Tom came by to tell me. Said Linda was spooked. Said they'd decided to head to South Carolina instead, visit Linda's sister. "You should leave too," Tom said. He wasn't making eye contact. "This place, something's wrong with it." "Did you see the carvings?" I asked. He nodded. "All around our site too. Linda found them this morning. She thinks..." He trailed off. "What?" "She thinks we were chosen, all of us, for something." After they left, I was alone in the campground. There were other campers somewhere. I could see RVs and tents in the distance, but my section was empty now, just me and the trees and whatever had carved symbols into the bark. I should have left, I know that. But something kept me there. Part of it was stubbornness. The same self-destructive impulse that had cost me my job and my marriage. The part of me that, when told to stop, always pushed harder. But another part, a part I didn't want to examine too closely, was curious. I wanted to understand. I'd spent 6 months feeling like I was losing my mind, like reality was slipping away from me piece by piece, and now here was something that felt almost validating. Something was actually wrong. It wasn't just me. That night I stayed awake. I sat in my RV with all the lights on, laptop open but ignored, waiting. The footsteps came at 11:37 p.m. Same as before, circling the RV. Methodical, patient. I went to the window and looked out. There were 3 of them. They moved in the darkness between the trees, visible only as suggestions of form. Tall, thin, wrong. They walked on 2 legs but with a gait that seemed practiced, like they'd learned how by watching but hadn't quite mastered it. They circled my RV 7 times. I counted. On the 8th circle, they stopped. One of them approached the door. I backed away from the window, my heart hammering. The door handle rattled. Once, twice. Then stopped. A voice came through the door. It sounded like Marcus. Same inflection, same rough quality from the screaming. "Jason," it said, "we need to talk." I didn't answer. "We know you're awake. We can hear your heart." The other 2 joined the first at the door. They moved in unison now, synchronized. Through the window, I could see them more clearly. They wore something approximating clothes, long, dark coverings that might have been robes or might have been their actual skin. Their heads were roughly human-shaped but elongated, like someone had stretched the skull lengthwise. "You're in the center," the Marcus voice said. "Do you understand what that means?" I found my voice. No. It means you were chosen. It means you belong to the pattern now. I don't belong to anything. One of them laughed. It used Linda's voice for it. Everyone belongs to something, Jason. You belong to your job, to your wife, to your anger. Now you belong to us. What are you? They didn't answer immediately. Instead, they moved away from the door back into their circling pattern. Round and round the RV. I watched them through different windows as they passed, trying to make sense of their appearance. But the more I looked, the less I understood. They seemed to shift, to refuse definitive shape. Sometimes I thought I could see faces, human faces, familiar faces, and other times they were blank, featureless. After what felt like hours but was probably 15 minutes, they stopped circling and simply stood in a triangle around the RV, equidistant from each other. The voice came again, but this time it wasn't using anyone's voice. It was just sound, fundamental and terrible, that somehow formed words. Sleep, it said, and I did. I woke up on the ground outside my RV. It was dawn. The sun was just clearing the trees, casting long shadows across the campsite. I was lying in the center of a new circle, this one made from my own possessions. My laptop, my clothes, my sleeping bag, my food supplies. Everything I owned, arranged in a perfect ring around me. My phone was gone. My keys were gone. The RV door was open. I stood up dizzy and disoriented. My mouth tasted like copper. When I touched my face, my fingers came away bloody. My nose had been bleeding heavily, enough to soak the collar of my shirt. I climbed into the RV. It had been ransacked. Every cabinet was open, every drawer pulled out. But nothing was missing except my phone and keys. Everything else had been used to make the circle. On the dinette table, written in what looked like ash or charcoal, was a message. 3 days I sat down heavily in the booth. My head was pounding and I felt hollowed out like something had reached inside me and scooped out parts I needed. I couldn't remember sleeping. Couldn't remember dreaming. There was just the command, sleep, and then nothing. I needed to leave. I knew that with absolute certainty. But without my keys, the RV wasn't going anywhere. And without my phone, I couldn't call for help. I could walk. It was 6 miles to the nearest town, maybe 8 to a gas station. I'd done longer hikes before. But the thought of leaving made me physically sick. My stomach churned, and I dry heaved over the RV's tiny sink. Something didn't want me to leave. I spent the day searching for my keys and phone. I checked every inch of the RV, then expanded my search to the campsite. I went through the circles of my possessions, hoping maybe I'd missed them. Nothing. Around noon, I heard an engine and looked up to see a campground maintenance truck coming down the road. I flagged it down. The driver was an older man, maybe 65, with skin weathered from years in the Florida sun. "You all right?" he asked, looking me over. I realized I still had dried blood on my shirt. "I need help," I said. "Someone stole my keys and phone. I need to call the police." He frowned. "The police were just here yesterday, weren't they? For that fellow in the van." "Yeah, but you sure you didn't just misplace them? Happens all the time. Folks come out here to relax, have a few drinks, lose track of things." "I didn't misplace them. Something took them." The look he gave me was equal parts pity and concern. "Something. Please, I just need to use a phone." He sighed and handed me his cell phone, but when I tried to dial, the screen went black. He took it back, confused. "Battery must have died, that's weird, it was full this morning." "Can you give me a ride to town then?" He looked uncomfortable. "I'm not supposed to. Liability and all that. But I can send the camp host over. Maybe she can help you out." He drove off, promising to send help. I watched his truck disappear around a bend in the road. Help never came. By evening, I was desperate enough to try leaving on foot. I packed a small backpack with water and the few food items I'd retrieved from the circle. Granola bars, a can of tuna, crackers. I started walking toward the campground entrance. I made it maybe 50 yards before the nausea hit. It came in waves, each one worse than the last, until I was on my hands and knees in the dirt, retching. My vision swam. The trees seemed to lean inward, closing off the path. I crawled back to the RV and the sickness faded. I was trapped. That night they came earlier. The sun hadn't fully set when I heard them moving through the campsite. This time there were more than 3. I counted at least 7 distinct sets of footsteps, though the way they moved made it hard to be sure. They didn't circle this time. They surrounded the RV and stood perfectly still. I turned off all the lights and sat in the dark, waiting. Hours passed. They didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there in their triangle formation or square or whatever geometry they'd chosen. Around midnight, one of them spoke. It used my voice. "Do you remember the day you hit her?" I went cold. "I never hit anyone." "Not with your hands," my voice continued. "With your words. Do you remember what you said?" "Michelle." "They were talking about Michelle. You told her she was the problem," my voice said. "You told her she was making you sick. Do you remember?" I did remember. It was 2 months before the divorce papers. We'd been fighting about something stupid, I couldn't even remember what. And I'd snapped, screamed at her that she was making me crazy, that her constant worrying and questions were like poison. I'd seen her face crumple, seen her take a step back like I'd physically struck her. "What do you want?" I asked the darkness. "We want you to understand," another voice said, Tom's voice. "We want you to see what you are. I'm not anything. I'm just—" "You're empty," Linda's voice interrupted. "You've been empty for a long time. That's why you fit the pattern. That's why you're in the center. I don't understand what that means." "You will," my voice said. "In 3 days you'll understand everything." They left after that, melting back into the forest, but I could still feel them out there, watching, waiting. The message on the table made terrible sense now. 3 days, a countdown. I didn't sleep that night or the next day. I tried everything I could think of to escape. I attempted to hotwire the RV using methods I'd seen in movies. It didn't work. I tried to flag down a passing car on the highway, but whenever I got close to the road, the sickness returned, doubling me over. The campground was emptying out. I watched RVs and cars leave, their occupants oblivious to whatever was happening in my section of the forest. A few times I tried to shout to them, to wave my arms, but my voice died in my throat and my arms felt heavy, uncooperative. By the second night, I was hallucinating from lack of sleep. I saw Marcus's van still parked in its sight, though I knew he'd driven away. I saw the Harpers sitting outside their Winnebago waving at me. I saw Michelle standing in the trees crying. The second night was worse than the first. They came as the sun set, but this time they didn't stay outside. I heard the RV door open, heard footsteps on the floor. I was hiding in the bathroom, the only door that locked, when one of them spoke through the thin wood. "We're not here to hurt you, Jason." I recognized the voice. It was mine again, but different somehow, clearer, calmer, the voice I used to have before everything went wrong. "Then what do you want?" "We want to complete the pattern. We want to make you whole." "I don't want to be whole. I want to be left alone." "That's the same thing," the voice said softly. "That's why you're here. That's why you've been alone your whole life, even when you were surrounded by people. You were always waiting for this. That's not true. Your job isolated you. Your marriage isolated you. Even before that, you were alone. Do you remember being a child, Jason? Do you remember how separate you felt?" I did remember. I remembered being 8 years old, sitting in a classroom full of other kids, feeling like I was behind glass, like I could see them and hear them but never quite reach them. That feeling had never gone away. It had just gotten worse over the years, more pronounced until I was a 39-year-old man living in an RV, fleeing from a life that had somehow slipped through my fingers. "The pattern needs a center," the voice continued. "Something empty that can be filled, something isolated that can become a point of connection. Do you understand?" "No. You will. Tomorrow night." The footsteps retreated. The RV door closed. I stayed in the bathroom until dawn, my back against the tub, my mind fractured and strange. The third day was a blur. I know the sun came up. I know I was alive. but I felt dissociated from my body, like I was watching myself from a distance. I saw myself stumble around the campsite, saw myself try once more to walk toward the road, only to collapse in convulsions 50 feet from the RV. I saw myself give up. When night fell, I was sitting in one of the Harper's abandoned camp chairs, staring at my RV. The symbols carved into the surrounding trees seemed to glow faintly in the dusk. The circles of bones had reappeared during the day. I didn't see them being placed, but sometime between noon and 3 p.m. they'd manifested again, perfect and complete. They came as the last light faded from the sky. All of them. Dozens. Maybe hundreds. They emerged from between the trees like they'd been waiting there all along. And maybe they had been. They moved in absolute silence, forming their own circles around the circles of bones, rings within rings with my RV at the center. One of them approached me. Up close. I could see it more clearly than before. It wore Linda Harper's face, but imperfectly. The features were correct, but the proportions were off, like a mask that didn't quite fit. Behind the Linda face, I could see other faces layering over one another. Tom, Marcus, people I didn't recognize, and beneath them all, something that wasn't human at all. "It's time," it said in Linda's voice. "Time for what?" "To complete the pattern, to become what you were always meant to be." "And what's that?" It smiled Linda's smile. "One of us." The others began to move inward, tightening the circles. I stood up from the chair, my legs shaking. I was beyond fear now. I'd passed through fear into something else, a kind of numb acceptance. Whatever was going to happen, would happen. One of them reached out and took my hand. Its fingers were wrong, too many joints, too cold, but the touch was almost gentle. It led me toward the RV. "Look," it said, pointing. The RV door was open, but it wasn't my RV inside anymore. The interior had changed, stretched, become something impossible. The walls extended into darkness that shouldn't have fit in the small space. I could see others in that darkness, people shapes standing in circles of their own, waiting. "This is the pattern," the thing wearing Linda's face said. "This is what we are, what we've always been, the spaces between things, the isolation that everyone feels but no one speaks about. We are the empty places in human hearts, and we've been growing stronger for a very long time." "Why me?" "Because you invited us in. Every time you pulled away from someone who loved you. Every time you chose isolation over connection. Every time you told yourself you were better off alone. You were making space for us." I looked into the darkness inside my RV and saw my future. Saw myself becoming one of them, joining their circles, walking the earth wearing faces that weren't mine, seeking out others like me. Others who had chosen to be alone so many times that alone was all they could be. "I don't want this," I said. "Yes, you do," it replied. "You've wanted this your whole life. To finally belong to something. To be part of a pattern. This is what you've been searching for." And the terrible thing was, I could feel the truth in its words. Some part of me, maybe the deepest, most damaged part, did want this. Wanted to stop fighting. Wanted to surrender to the emptiness I'd been cultivating for years. The circles tightened further. Hands, too many hands, reached for me. The darkness in the RV beckoned. I ran. I don't know how I broke free. Maybe they let me. Maybe my moment of wanting wasn't enough. But I ran through the circles of bones, scattering them, ran past the trees with their carved symbols, ran toward the road despite the sickness rising in my throat. This time I didn't stop when the nausea hit. I ran through it, vomiting and stumbling, my vision tunneling. Behind me I could hear them following, not running but walking, patient and inexorable. I made it to the road. A car was coming, headlights cutting through the darkness. I staggered into the middle of the pavement, waving my arms. The car, a Toyota sedan with a young woman driving, screeched to a stop inches from me. She rolled down her window, angry and frightened. "What the hell is wrong with you?" I couldn't speak. I turned to look back at the campground. They were gone. The forest was just forest, dark and quiet and empty. "Are you on something?" the woman asked. "Do you need help?" I need. I swallowed hard, tasting bile. I need to get out of here. She looked at me, at my filthy clothes, my wild eyes, my trembling hands, and I saw her making a decision. I thought she might drive away, leave me there. Instead, she unlocked her passenger door. "Get in," she said. "I'll take you to the hospital." They kept me in the hospital for 3 days. Psych evaluation. They asked about drugs, about alcohol, about my mental health history. I told them the truth about the divorce, the job loss, the panic attacks, but not about the things in the forest. I knew how that would sound. Michelle came on the second day. The hospital must have called her. She was still my emergency contact. We sat in the day room, awkward and distant. "I heard you had some kind of breakdown," she said. "Something like that. Are you getting help?" "They're keeping me a few more days, then I don't know. Maybe a program, maybe medication." She nodded. We didn't talk much after that. Before she left, she squeezed my hand. "I hope you figure it out, Jason." "I really do." The police recovered my RV from Juniper Springs. My keys were in the ignition. My phone was on the dash, dead battery. The circles of bones were gone. The carved symbols were gone. The campground host said I'd seemed fine when I checked in, just quiet and polite. No one reported anything unusual. It was like it had never happened. They discharged me on the 4th day with prescriptions and a referral to a therapist. I moved into a cheap efficiency apartment in Gainesville, got a new job doing remote IT support, started going to therapy twice a week. I told the therapist I'd had a psychotic break, stress-induced hallucinations. She agreed that it fit the pattern of my mental health history. We worked on coping strategies, on building connections with other people, on not isolating myself. It helped. I got better. Months passed. I stopped thinking about the forest every day, then every week. I made a few friends at a local coffee shop where I worked remotely, started dating someone. Nothing serious, but it was nice. Normal. I convinced myself it had all been in my head. Then one night, 6 months after leaving the hospital, I woke up at 3 a.m. with a feeling of wrongness. I went to my apartment window and looked out at the parking lot below. They were there, standing in the sodium yellow glow of the streetlights. Not 3 of them this time, just one. It stood perfectly still, looking up at my window. As I watched, it raised one hand in a slow wave. The motion was familiar. I'd seen Michelle make that exact gesture 100 times. I backed away from the window, closed the blinds, took a sedative, and forced myself back to sleep. When I checked in the morning, it was gone. But carved into the bark of the palm tree outside my building were 3 circles, one inside another with rays extending from the center. I'm writing this now because I need someone to know. I need someone to understand that I'm not crazy. Or maybe I am, and this is the documentation of my descent. I don't know anymore. What I do know is that I feel it growing inside me. That emptiness, that isolation. I feel myself pulling away from the friends I've made, from the woman I'm dating. I tell myself it's just my old patterns reasserting themselves, but I know better. They didn't let me go in the forest. They just let me run. And now they're waiting for me to finish becoming what I started becoming that night. Sometimes I see them in crowds. A face that's almost right but not quite. A person standing too still, watching me with eyes that don't blink enough. Yesterday I passed a homeless man on the street, and he whispered as I walked by. "The pattern is waiting for you, Jason. I've started seeing the symbols everywhere, carved into bathroom stalls, spray-painted on walls, scratched into bus stop benches, 3 circles radiating spokes, always watching, always waiting. Last night I found bones on my doorstep, small ones, bird bones maybe, arranged in a perfect circle. I threw them away, but they were back this morning. The pattern needs a center, something empty that can be filled. And I think I've been empty my whole life. I don't know how much longer I can fight it. Every day the pull gets stronger. The isolation feels less like a problem and more like a solution. I catch myself thinking about getting in my car and driving to Ocala, to Juniper Springs, to the campground where I left part of myself. They're calling me back, and I'm afraid that this time I won't run. If you're reading this, if someone finds this account after I'm gone, know that I tried. I tried to be normal, to be connected, to be human. But maybe some people are meant to be alone. Maybe some people are meant to belong to the empty places. Maybe that's what I've always been. The woman I'm dating asked me to move in with her yesterday. I said I'd think about it. But when I closed my eyes last night, I saw my answer written in bones. 3 circles, one inside another, and me in the center, finally home. Story 2. My name is Megan Lee. What happened at Mammoth Cave in Kentucky last October still doesn't make sense to me, and I've stopped trying to make it make sense. I'm writing this down because my therapist said it might help, but I don't think it will. Some things don't get better when you talk about them. Some things just sit inside you and rot. My boyfriend Derek and I drove down from Indianapolis on a Thursday. We'd rented an RV for the weekend, one of those mid-sized ones that's supposed to sleep 4, but really only fits 2 comfortably. Derek had been planning this trip for months. He was big into geology, always going on about limestone formations and underground rivers. I didn't care much about rocks, but I liked camping, and I needed to get away from the city for a while. We arrived at the Green River campground around 3 in the afternoon. The place wasn't crowded, just a dozen or so RVs scattered across the wooded area, most of them older models with rust spots and faded paint. Our spot was at the far end, near where the trees got thick and the ground started sloping down toward the actual park boundary. Derek backed the RV in while I stood outside and guided him, even though he didn't really need help. He just liked me to be involved. The first thing I noticed was how quiet it was. No kids playing, no dogs barking, no music from other campsites. Just wind in the trees and the occasional bird call. The sky was gray, threatening rain but not delivering. Derek said it was perfect weather for exploring caves, cooler temperatures, less crowded trails. We set up our site. Derek ran the hookups while I arranged things inside. The RV had that specific smell of rented vehicles, cleaning products trying to cover up years of other people's lives. I opened the windows to air it out. Through the window over the sink, I could see the other campers. An older couple 2 spots down, a family with teenagers across the way, a guy by himself in a conversion van closer to the entrance. Want to check out the visitor center before it closes? Derek called from outside. Sure. We drove over in Derek's truck. The visitor center was one of those 1960s Park Service buildings, low and brown with big windows. A ranger behind the desk, maybe 50 years old, looked up when we entered. Her name tag said Linda. Help you folks? She asked. Derek launched into questions about which caves were open, what tours were available, difficulty levels. Linda answered patiently, pulling out maps and brochures. I wandered over to a display about the cave system's history. There were old photographs, explorers from the 1920s, oil lamps, rope ladders. One photo showed the entrance to something called Green River Cave, a smaller cave system about 2 miles from the main tourist area. Is this one open? I asked Linda, pointing. She glanced over. Green River? No, that's been closed since the 80s. Structural issues. She turned back to Derek. Now, if you're interested in the longer tour, I'd recommend the 6-hour expedition. It covers... I stopped listening. Something about that photograph held my attention. The cave entrance was just a dark hole in a limestone cliff, surrounded by trees. But there was something about it, a familiarity I couldn't place. Architected narrative tension through psychological buildup and biographical details. Good start. I need to continue building tension slowly, introduce the brother who died and work toward the cave voice. Let me continue with realistic details and psychological buildup. We got back to the campground around 5:30. Derek wanted to grill burgers, so we sat outside at the picnic table while the charcoal heated up. The older couple from 2 spots down walked past with their dog, a golden retriever that stopped to sniff our site. Evening, the man said. He had a thick Kentucky accent. Y'all just get in? This afternoon, Derek said. First time here? Yeah. You? Oh, we come every year. Love it here. The man paused, holding his dog's leash as it strained toward the woods. Y'all be careful if you go hiking off the main trails. Easy to get turned around in these parts. We're planning to stick to the tours, Derek said. The man nodded. Smart. Some folks think they can explore on their own, end up needing rescue. He tugged his dog. Come on, buddy. Leave these people alone. They continued down the road. Derek flipped the burgers. I watched the trees. The light was fading faster than it should have, or maybe it wasn't. Maybe I was just tired from the drive. You okay? Derek asked. Yeah. Why? You've been quiet. Just thinking. About? I didn't know how to explain it. That photograph of Green River Cave had stirred something in me, some memory I couldn't quite grasp. I'd been to Mammoth Cave before once when I was 10, with my family, Mom, Dad, and my brother Andrew. We'd taken the basic tour, saw some stalactites, bought postcards at the gift shop. Andrew had been 14, in that phase where he was too cool to seem interested in anything. But I remembered him being fascinated by the caves. He kept asking the tour guide questions, wanted to know about unexplored passages and underground lakes. Andrew died 2 years ago. Car accident on I-65, some asshole texting and driving. He was 28. I was 24. We hadn't been particularly close as adults. He lived in Louisville. I was in Indianapolis. We saw each other at Thanksgiving and Christmas. But his death had left a hole in my life that I was still learning to navigate around. I hadn't thought about that childhood trip in years. Didn't know why I was thinking about it now. Just tired, I told Derek. We ate our burgers. The rain started around 7, soft at first, then harder. We went inside the RV and Derek found a card game in one of the cabinets. We played while the rain drummed on the roof. Around 9, the rain stopped. Derek suggested a walk to stretch our legs before bed. The campground was dark. Most people had their lights off or were inside their RVs. Our flashlights cut through the darkness as we walked the main road loop. The air smelled like wet earth and pine. Somewhere in the distance I heard what sounded like music, faint, maybe from one of the other campers. You hear that? I asked. Derek stopped. What? Music. He listened. I don't hear anything. We stood there for a moment. The music was gone. Maybe I'd imagined it. We continued walking. When we got back to our site, Derek said he was going to take a shower in the campground facilities. I said I'd wait, didn't feel like showering yet. After he left, I sat outside at the picnic table. The clouds had cleared and I could see stars, though not many. Too much ambient light from the campground. I thought about calling my mom, seeing how she was doing. She hadn't been the same since Andrew died. None of us had. But it was late and I didn't know what I'd say. My phone buzzed. A text from my friend Rachel back in Indianapolis. How's the trip? Derek propose yet? LOL. I smiled despite myself. Rachel had this theory that Derek was going to propose this weekend. I'd told her she was crazy. Derek and I had only been dating 8 months, but Rachel insisted the camping trip was too romantic to be just a camping trip. I texted back, no ring yet, just bugs and burgers. I was about to put my phone away when I noticed something odd. The signal bars were fluctuating, full strength, then nothing, then 2 bars, then nothing again. I walked a few steps watching the bars dance. When I got to the edge of our site, near the tree line, the bars disappeared completely. When I stepped back, they returned. Derek came back from the shower, hair wet, smelling like soap. Your turn if you want. I'm good. I'll shower in the morning. We went inside. The RV's bed was in the back, separated from the main area by a thin partition. We changed and climbed in. Derek fell asleep almost immediately. He always did. I lay there, listening to him breathe, watching shadows from the window move across the ceiling. I must have dozed off eventually because I woke to a sound. A voice. Calling my name. Megan. I sat up. Derek was still asleep beside me. The voice came again, distant from outside. Megan. I knew that voice. Knew it in my bones, in my blood. Andrew's voice. My heart hammered. I slid out of bed, careful not to wake Derek. Went to the window. Outside, the campground was dark and still. No one in sight. But the voice came again, fainter now, from the direction of the woods. "Megan, please." I grabbed my phone and flashlight, unlocked the RV door as quietly as I could, and stepped outside. The night air was cold, much colder than it should have been for October. I turned on my flashlight and swept it across the trees. Nothing. "Andrew?" I whispered. Silence, then, "Help me." The voice was definitely coming from the woods. I walked toward the tree line, my flashlight beam jumping with each step. This was insane. Andrew was dead. I'd been to his funeral, watched them lower his casket into the ground. This was a dream, or stress, or... "Please, Meg. Meg." He used to call me that when we were kids, no one else did. I reached the tree line. The voice was farther now, deeper in the woods. I looked back at the RV. Should I wake Derek? Tell him what I was hearing? But what would I say? That my dead brother was calling me from the forest? I took another step into the trees, then another. The flashlight caught tree trunks, hanging moss, ferns. The ground was soft from the rain, slightly muddy. I could hear my own breathing loud in my ears. "Where are you?" I called softly. No answer. I waited, listening. The woods were silent now. No voice, no movement, nothing. I stood there for maybe 5 minutes, starting to feel foolish, starting to convince myself I'd been dreaming or half asleep. Then I saw it. A light, flickering between the trees. Not a flashlight, something else. Warmer, like firelight. Against every instinct that told me to turn back, I walked toward it. The ground sloped downward. I had to grab onto tree branches to keep from slipping. The light grew brighter. I came around a boulder and stopped. There was a cave entrance, small, maybe 4 feet high, partially hidden by brush, and just inside, a camping lantern sat on the ground, its LED glow illuminating the rocky walls. I approached slowly. "Hello?" No response. I crouched down, shining my flashlight into the cave. It went back about 20 feet before seeming to narrow. The lantern sat just inside the entrance, like someone had left it there and walked away. This was wrong. Everything about this was wrong. But I couldn't shake the feeling that Andrew had led me here, that he needed me to find this place. I picked up the lantern. There was no brand name, no markings. Just a standard camping lantern, battery-powered, turned on high. Why would someone leave it here? "Megan." The voice came from inside the cave. Deeper in, past where my light could reach. "Andrew?" My voice cracked. "Come find me. Please." I stepped into the cave. The ceiling was low. I had to crouch. The walls were damp, covered in that white flowstone Linda at the visitor center had talked about. My light caught something carved into the wall. Letters, crude and uneven. "Don't." Just that one word. "Don't." I stopped. Some part of my brain was screaming at me to leave, to run back to the RV, to wake Derek and tell him everything. But Andrew's voice came again, and it sounded desperate. "I'm scared, Meg. Please." I continued forward. The cave narrowed, then opened into a wider chamber. My light swept across the space. Empty. No Andrew. No one. Just rock and darkness and the sound of water dripping somewhere I couldn't see. "Andrew?" I called. "Where are you?" Nothing. I stood there, breathing hard, reality crashing back. What was I doing? My brother was dead. I was in some random cave in the middle of the night, alone, and Derek didn't even know I'd left. This was how people died in horror movies. This was... Something moved behind me. I spun around, light catching nothing. But I heard it. Footsteps. Or something like footsteps. A shuffling sound. Coming from the direction I'd entered. "Hello?" My voice echoed. The shuffling stopped. Silence pressed in, thick and suffocating. I backed toward the far wall, keeping my light pointed at the entrance. Nothing appeared. But I could feel something. A presence. Watching. I don't know how long I stood there. Maybe 30 seconds. Maybe 5 minutes. Time felt wrong in that cave, stretched and compressed simultaneously. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I moved toward the entrance quickly, but trying not to run. The shuffling started again, keeping pace with me. I didn't look back. Didn't let myself think about what might be behind me. I reached the entrance and burst out into the night air, kept going up the slope, grabbing trees to pull myself forward. Behind me, I heard, or thought I heard, something emerge from the cave, but I didn't look, didn't stop, didn't slow down until I broke through the tree line and saw the RV. Derek was outside in his boxers and t-shirt, holding a flashlight, looking panicked. "Megan! Jesus Christ, where were you?" I bent over, hands on my knees, trying to catch my breath. I'm sorry. I heard something and You've been gone for an hour." He grabbed my shoulders. "I woke up and you were gone and you didn't answer your phone and..." "An hour?" I looked at my phone. 2:47 a.m. We'd gone to bed around 10:30. I'd heard the voice maybe around midnight. Couldn't have been in the cave more than 20 minutes. "I texted you 15 times, Derek said. I was about to call the Rangers." I looked at my phone. No texts, no missed calls, but the time was definitely 2:47. "I don't understand," I said. "My phone didn't..." "What were you doing out there?" "How could I explain?" "I heard my dead brother's voice and followed it into a cave. I found a lantern that someone left in the woods for no reason. None of it made sense even to me. I couldn't sleep," I said finally. "Went for a walk. Got turned around." He stared at me. "For over an hour." "I guess so." He didn't believe me. I could see it in his face, but he was also scared, which overrode his suspicion. "Come inside, please. I need you to not disappear on me like that." We went back into the RV. I stripped off my muddy shoes and clothes. Derek watched me like he thought I might vanish again if he looked away. I washed my face and hands in the tiny bathroom sink. When I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. My eyes were wild, my hair tangled with leaves and mud. "Are you okay?" Derek asked through the door. "Yeah, just tired." We got back into bed. Derek pulled me close, his arm tight around my waist. "You scared the shit out of me," he whispered. "I know. I'm sorry. Promise me you won't do that again." "I promise." But even as I said it, I could hear Andrew's voice in my memory. "I'm scared, Meg. Please." I didn't sleep the rest of the night. Just lay there listening to Derek breathe, watching the windows slowly lighten with approaching dawn. Around 6, I gave up and got out of bed. Derek stirred but didn't wake. I made coffee in the RV's tiny kitchen and sat at the dinette staring at nothing. My phone was on the table. I picked it up and opened my text messages. The last text was my message to Rachel about bugs and burgers. Nothing from Derek. No record of him trying to contact me. I checked my recent calls. Nothing. I opened my photo gallery, scrolled through the pictures from yesterday. Derek backing in the RV, the campground, the visitor center. Then I saw something that made my stomach drop. A photo I didn't remember taking, timestamp 1:13 a.m. It showed the inside of the cave, the wider chamber I'd been in, and in the far corner, just at the edge of the light, a shape, human-shaped, standing perfectly still. I deleted the photo immediately, then deleted it from the recently deleted folder. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. Morning. Derek came out of the bedroom, rubbing his eyes. "You're up early." "Couldn't sleep." He sat across from me. "Listen, about last night. I'm really sorry. I don't know what I was thinking." "Are you okay? Like really okay? You've been acting weird since we got here." "I'm fine, just... This place brings back memories. I came here with my family when I was a kid. With Andrew." Derek's expression softened. He reached across the table and took my hand. "Why didn't you tell me?" "I didn't remember until yesterday. Seeing all the cave stuff, I guess it triggered something." Do you want to leave? We can pack up. Go somewhere else. No. No, I want to stay, I think. I think I need to be here. I didn't understand why I said that, but it felt true. Like there was something unfinished here, something I needed to see through. We spent the morning at the main cave complex. Derek was in heaven, listening to the tour guide explain about underground rivers and sinkhole formation. I tried to focus, tried to be present, but my mind kept drifting back to the cave in the woods, the voice, the shape in the photograph. Around noon, we broke off from the tour to eat lunch at the visitor center cafeteria. Linda, the ranger from yesterday, came over to our table. How are you folks enjoying your visit? It's great, Derek said. Really fascinating stuff. Linda smiled. Then she looked at me. You asked about Green River Cave yesterday. Mind if I ask why? I shrugged, trying to seem casual. Just curious. Saw it in one of the old photos. Linda pulled out a chair and sat down, uninvited. I've been working here 30 years. Every few years, someone gets curious about Green River. Usually doesn't end well. What do you mean? Derek asked. Linda leaned back, considering her words. The cave's been officially closed since 1983, but people still try to find it, explore it. We have to rescue at least one person a year from those woods, sometimes more. Why don't you just block it off? I asked. We tried. Put up fences, barriers, they get torn down. It's like... She paused. Like the cave doesn't want to be closed. Derek laughed. Come on. Caves don't want anything. Linda didn't laugh. You'd be surprised what these old places want. The Cherokee had stories about that cave long before any white settlers arrived. Said it was a doorway, that things could come through. She stood up. Anyway, just be careful out there. Stick to the marked trails. After she left, Derek shook his head. Friendly advice or trying to scare the tourists? I don't know. But I thought about what she'd said. A doorway. Things could come through. Andrew's voice calling from inside. We went back to the campground in the afternoon. Derek wanted to rest before dinner. I told him I was going to walk around, get some fresh air. He made me promise not to disappear again. I promised. I walked the campground loop, trying to look casual, but really I was studying the tree line, looking for the spot where I'd entered last night. Everything looked different in daylight. The trees all seemed the same. I couldn't find the right place. The older couple was outside their RV, sitting in lawn chairs. The wife waved me over. Join us for a minute, honey. We don't bite. I walked over. She gestured to an empty chair. I'm Margaret, this is Earl. Megan. First time here, Earl tells me. Yes, ma'am. You liking it? It's nice. Margaret studied me with sharp eyes. You look tired, dear. You sleeping okay? Not really. New place, I guess. She glanced at her husband. Earl, didn't we have trouble sleeping our first time here? Earl nodded slowly. The sounds kept us up. Took a few days to get used to it. What sounds, I asked. Oh, the woods at night, animals, wind. Sometimes we'd hear what sounded like voices, but it was just the way the air moves through the trees. Voices? My heart rate picked up. Margaret leaned forward. You heard them too? I hesitated. I thought I did, last night. The couple exchanged a look. Margaret spoke carefully. Did the voice sound familiar? How did you... It happened to us too our first year. I heard my sister calling. She died 6 months before. I went looking for her. Margaret's eyes were sad. Found myself at a cave entrance. Earl came and brought me back. This cave, I said. Was it called Green River? Margaret nodded. That's the one. Earl spoke up. It's something about this area. The limestone, the underground water creates acoustic effects, makes you hear things that aren't there. Acoustic effects don't explain why I heard my sister's voice, Margaret said sharply. Don't explain why it knew my name. Could have been a dream, Earl said, sleepwalking. I wasn't asleep. They started bickering. I stood up. "Thank you for talking to me. I should get back." "Just stay away from that cave, Margaret called after me. "Nothing good comes from it." I walked back to our site. Derek was still inside reading. I sat at the picnic table and tried to think rationally. Acoustic effects, sleepwalking, stress and grief manifesting as auditory hallucinations. All possible explanations. But the photograph, the shape in the cave. That wasn't acoustic effects. Around dinner time, the family across the way came over to introduce themselves. The parents were Beth and Tom. Their kids were Emma and Justin, both teenagers. They were nice. Normal. We made small talk about the caves, about camping, about college football. Normal conversation. It felt jarring after everything else. "We're doing a campfire tonight," Beth said. "You two should join us. We've got marshmallows." Derek looked at me. I nodded. "That sounds great." After they left, Derek said, "See, this trip is good. You're relaxing." Yeah. But I wasn't relaxed. I couldn't stop thinking about the cave, about Margaret hearing her sister's voice, about Linda saying it was a doorway. We joined the campfire around 8. Beth and Tom had set up a nice fire ring. They'd invited the solo guy from the conversion van. His name was Rick. He was traveling cross-country, taking his time. Margaret and Earl came too, bringing lawn chairs. It was pleasant, normal. People telling stories, roasting marshmallows, complaining good-naturedly about RV repairs and gas prices. Then Justin, the teenage son, said something that made my blood freeze. "Did you guys see those weird marks on some of the trees, like symbols or something?" Tom frowned. "What symbols?" "I don't know. Emma and I found them when we were exploring this afternoon. Down past your sighting." He nodded at us. "Show me," I said, standing up too quickly. Everyone looked at me. Derek said, "Meg, I want to see. I'm interested in that kind of thing." Justin shrugged and grabbed a flashlight. I grabbed mine. Derek started to stand, but I told him to stay. Enjoy the fire. I'd be right back. Justin led me past our site, into the area where the tree line started. Emma came too, filming on her phone. "It's just around here somewhere," Justin said, sweeping his light across the trees. "There," Emma said, pointing. The symbol was carved into the bark of an oak tree, crude but deliberate, a circle with lines radiating out from it, and beneath it, letters, "Don't." "There's more," Justin said, moving to the next tree. Another circle. More letters. "Listen." We found 5 trees total, each with the same circle symbol and a single word. "Don't." "Listen. It. Lies. Run." "That's so creepy," Emma said, still filming. "Who do you think did it?" "Probably just some kids messing around," Justin said, but he sounded uncertain. I was staring at the last word. Run. The carving looked old, the bark grown around the edges. This wasn't recent vandalism. "We should get back," I said. We returned to the fire. I sat down next to Derek, but I couldn't focus on the conversation. The words kept circling in my mind. Don't listen. It lies. Run. Around 10, people started heading back to their sites. Derek and I went into our RV. I took a shower, letting the hot water run until it started to go cold. When I got out, Derek was already in bed. "You coming?" he asked. "In a minute." I sat at the dinette, looking out the window at the dark trees. My phone was on the table. I picked it up and Googled Green River Cave, Mammoth Cave, Kentucky. The results were sparse. A few mentions in old spelunking forums. A Wikipedia article about the Mammoth Cave system that mentioned Green River as a minor satellite cave closed to the public. I dug deeper, found a blog post from 2011 titled Weird Experiences at Mammoth Cave. Someone named Jennifer wrote about hearing her deceased father's voice while camping there. She'd followed it to a cave entrance and gone inside. The post ended abruptly. "I don't want to talk about what I found. Just don't go into Green River Cave, please." There were comments. Other people reporting similar experiences. Voices of dead loved ones, all leading to the same cave. One comment. From someone called Mothman Truth 89, I stood out. Green River isn't a cave. It's a mouth, and it's hungry. I closed the browser, looked at the dark window. Somewhere out there, that cave was waiting. Derek called from the bedroom. "Megan, you okay?" "Yeah, coming to bed now." I turned off the light and climbed in beside him. He was already half asleep. I lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to the night sounds outside, an owl hooting, wind in the trees. Nothing unusual. Then, around midnight, I heard it again. "Megan." Andrew's voice, distant but clear. "Meg, please, I'm so cold." Derek was asleep beside me. I could wake him, tell him everything. But what would he do? Call the Rangers? They'd think I was crazy, having a breakdown. And maybe I was. "Please, Meg, it hurts." I got out of bed, put on my clothes from earlier, still muddy from last night. Derek didn't wake. I grabbed my flashlight and phone, and I left the RV. The campground was silent, everyone asleep. I walked toward the tree line, past the marked trees into the woods. The voice guided me, always just far enough ahead that I had to keep moving. The ground sloped down. I recognized this path from the night before. The cave entrance appeared, the same camping lantern still inside, still glowing. I stopped at the threshold. "Andrew?" I called. "If that's really you, prove it. Tell me something only you would know." Silence. Then, from deep in the cave, "You broke my Nintendo when you were 8. Blamed it on the dog." My legs went weak. I'd forgotten about that. It was true. I'd dropped his Game Boy down the stairs and convinced him that our golden retriever Max had knocked it off the table. He'd believed me. Never told our parents. "Andrew, what's happening? How are you?" "Come inside, please. I need you to see." Every instinct screamed at me to run, but it was Andrew's voice. My brother. If there was even a chance he was in there, suffering, needed help. I stepped into the cave. The lantern illuminated the first section. I crouched low, moving forward. The air was cold and damp, smelling of minerals and something else, something organic and wrong. "Keep coming," Andrew's voice said. "I'm farther in." I reached the wider chamber. My light swept across the walls. Empty, but there was an opening I hadn't noticed before, a passage leading deeper. I approached it, had to get on my hands and knees to fit through. That's it. Just a little farther. The passage opened into another chamber, larger than the first. And here, finally, I saw something. A shape against the far wall. Human-sized. "Andrew?" I stood up, my light shaking. The shape moved, turned toward me, and I saw its face. It was Andrew. Exactly as he'd looked the last time I saw him alive. Same hair, same clothes, the flannel shirt and jeans he'd been wearing the day of the accident. He smiled at me. "Hey, Meg." I started crying. "How is this possible?" "Does it matter?" He took a step closer. "I'm here. You found me." Something was wrong. His smile was too wide. His eyes didn't blink. "You died," I whispered. "I was at your funeral. I know, I remember the accident, remember the pain, and then I woke up here in the dark. I've been here for 2 years, Meg, waiting for someone to find me. That doesn't make sense. None of this makes sense, but here we are." He held out his hand. "Come on. We should go. Get out of here together." I looked at his hand. His fingers were too long, just slightly, but enough to notice. "You're not Andrew," I said. His smile didn't falter. "What makes you say that?" "He's dead. I saw his body." "Did you?" The thing wearing Andrew's face tilted its head. "Or did you see a closed casket?" That was true. The accident had been bad. Closed casket funeral. But I'd identified him at the morgue. Hadn't I? The memory felt fuzzy. "What are you?" I asked. "I'm what you need me to be." It took another step closer. "I'm the voice in the dark, the familiar face, the comfort you've been looking for. Stay back." "Or what?" It laughed. And the sound wasn't Andrew's laugh. It was something else, something that echoed wrong in the enclosed space. You came to me, Megan. You invited me in, said my name. 3 times now. I hadn't said Andrew's name 3 times, had I? What do you want? I asked. The same thing everyone wants, to continue existing, and you're going to help me with that. It lunged. I turned and ran, back through the narrow passage, my light bouncing wildly. Behind me, I heard it following. Not running, walking, taking its time. I burst into the first chamber, scrambled toward the entrance. Something grabbed my ankle. I kicked back, connected with something solid. It released me. I crawled toward the entrance, toward the lantern's light, toward the outside world. I could see the opening ahead. Almost there. Then Derek was at the entrance, crouching down, reaching for me. Megan, take my hand. Relief flooded through me. I reached for him, and stopped. Derek was asleep in the RV. I'd left him there. He couldn't be here unless he'd woken up, followed me, but... Come on, Derek said. Grab my hand. His eyes were wrong. Too bright, too eager. Behind me, the Andrew thing was getting closer. In front of me, the Derek thing waited. Both wearing familiar faces, both promising safety. Don't listen, I whispered, remembering the carved words. It lies. I looked at the cave entrance, at the small gap beside the Derek thing. If I was fast enough. I lunged past it, squeezed through the opening it didn't expect. Something grabbed at my jacket, but I twisted free, left it behind, burst out into the night air, ran up the slope, branches whipping my face, feet slipping in the mud. Behind me, sounds, things emerging from the cave, moving through the forest. I broke through the tree line and stopped, gasping for breath. The campground was dark and silent. Our RV sat exactly where we'd left it. I ran to it, threw open the door. Derek sat at the dinette, a cup of coffee in front of him. He looked up, startled. Megan, what the hell? You're covered in mud. Where were you? You were asleep, I said. I left you sleeping. I've been up for 20 minutes, made coffee, and came out here to read. He showed me his book, a geology textbook. You went out for a walk and didn't tell me? I looked at my phone. 5:47 a.m. Sunrise. How long was I gone? I don't know. I woke up and you weren't in bed. I heard you outside a minute ago. I went to the bedroom. The bed was empty, sheets thrown back. Like Derek said, he'd been up for a while, but I'd left him sleeping at midnight. I was sure of it. I went back to the main area. Derek was staring at me with concern. Seriously, what's going on? You're scaring me. I need to shower. I locked myself in the bathroom and turned the water on hot. Stripped off my muddy clothes. In the mirror, I saw scratches on my arms, dirt under my fingernails. Proof that I'd been somewhere, done something. But what? Had I really seen Andrew and Derek in that cave? Or had I been sleepwalking, hallucinating? The hours didn't make sense. Nothing made sense. I showered until the water ran cold. When I came out, Derek had made breakfast. Eggs and toast. He'd set the table, trying to act normal, but I could see the worry in his eyes. I think we should leave, he said. Go home, this trip isn't working out. Okay, he blinked. Really? You're not going to argue? No, you're right. We should go. We packed up the RV in silence. I kept glancing at the tree line, half expecting to see something watching. But there was nothing, just trees and morning light. Margaret and Earl came over as we were disconnecting the water hookup. Leaving early? Margaret asked. Yeah, Derek said. Something came up back home. Margaret looked at me. Really looked at me. Did you go back to the cave? I don't know, I said honestly. I think so, but I'm not sure what I saw. She nodded slowly. That's the way it works. It shows you what you want to see. What you need to see. Until you're too deep to get out. How do you know? I asked. Because I went back too. The second night we were here that first year. I couldn't help myself. She pulled back her sleeve, showed me a scar running up her forearm. I got out, but it took a piece of me. It always takes a piece. Earl put his hand on her shoulder. We should let them go, Marge. We said our goodbyes. Derek pulled the RV out onto the main road. As we drove past the campground entrance, I looked back one more time. There was a figure standing at the tree line, too far away to see clearly. It raised its hand in a wave. I turned around and didn't look back again. We drove for 3 hours in silence. Derek tried to make conversation a few times, but I couldn't focus enough to respond. Finally, he stopped trying. When we got back to Indianapolis, Derek helped me carry my stuff into my apartment. We stood in the doorway, neither of us sure what to say. Are we okay? He asked finally. I don't know. I need time to think. About us, or about what happened there? Both, everything. He nodded. Call me when you're ready to talk. After he left, I sat on my couch and stared at nothing. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Thanks for visiting. I deleted it, blocked the number. It didn't matter. That night I dreamed of the cave, of Andrew's too wide smile and Derek's too bright eyes, of something wearing familiar faces reaching out to me in the dark. I woke up at 3 a.m., went to the bathroom, splashed water on my face. In the mirror, I noticed something I hadn't seen before, a mark on my shoulder, small and circular like a brand, and from it thin lines radiating out, the same symbol from the trees. I touched it. It didn't hurt, didn't feel like anything. Just a mark on my skin that hadn't been there before. Or maybe it had always been there. Maybe I just hadn't noticed. I went back to bed, lay in the dark, listening to the city sounds outside my window, cars passing, a siren in the distance. Normal sounds, safe sounds. But underneath it all, if I listened very carefully, I could hear something else, a whisper, faint and far away but growing closer. Megan. I pulled the covers over my head, closed my eyes and waited for morning. Derek called the next day. I didn't answer. He called again the day after. I listened to his voicemail. Hey, it's me. Just wanted to check in. I'm worried about you. Call me back when you can. Love you. Love you. He'd never said that before. I didn't call back. Rachel texted, heard from Derek you cut the trip short. Everything okay? I responded, fine. Just wasn't feeling it. She didn't press. Rachel was good that way. I went back to work on Monday, tried to focus on my job, on emails and meetings and spreadsheets. But I kept drifting, kept thinking about the cave, about the voices, about the mark on my shoulder that I covered with long sleeves, even though it was too warm for them. That night I Googled Green River Cave again, found a news article from 1983, the year it was officially closed. A college student had gone missing for 3 days. When search and rescue found her, she was sitting at the cave entrance, unresponsive. She never spoke again. Died in a psychiatric facility 2 years later. I found another article from 1971. A man claimed his wife went into Green River Cave and came back different. She looked like my Sarah, he told reporters, but she wasn't. I don't know what came back, but it wasn't her. He'd killed her and himself 3 weeks later. There were more stories, going back decades, all the same pattern. People hearing voices, following them into the cave, coming back wrong, or not coming back at all. I closed the laptop, looked at my reflection in the dark screen. I looked the same. Same brown hair, same hazel eyes, same face I'd had my whole life. But was I the same? Or had something changed in that cave? Had something come back with me? I didn't know. That was the worst part. I couldn't trust my own memories, my own perceptions. Had I really seen Andrew and Derek in that cave? Or had it been hallucinations, stress, grief manifesting as delusions? The mark on my shoulder suggested otherwise. But I couldn't trust that either. Couldn't trust anything. I took a sleeping pill that night. Slept dreamlessly for the first time in days. When I woke up, Derek was sitting in my bedroom chair, watching me sleep. I screamed, scrambled backward against the headboard. Easy, easy, he said, hands up. It's just me. I used my key. You weren't answering your phone and I was worried. I'd given him a key to my apartment last month, for emergencies. You can't just come into my apartment, I said. I know, I'm sorry. But Meg, I'm really worried about you. You won't talk to me, won't return my calls, you're acting. I'm acting what? He hesitated. Different. I laughed. Couldn't help it. Different how? I don't know. Distant. Like you're not really here. He leaned forward. What happened in that cave? And don't tell me nothing. I know you went there both nights. How do you know that? I followed you. The second night. Stayed far enough back that you wouldn't see me. I watched you go into that cave. You were in there for hours. You followed me? I was scared. You were sleepwalking or something. I didn't know what else to do. Why didn't you stop me? I tried. I called your name, but you didn't respond. It was like you couldn't hear me. He ran his hands through his hair. And then when you came out, Meg, you weren't alone. My blood went cold. What do you mean? There was something with you, behind you. I couldn't see it clearly, but... He looked at me with frightened eyes. Did you feel it? Did you know it was there? I didn't answer, couldn't answer, because I hadn't known. Hadn't felt anything following me out of the cave. But that didn't mean it wasn't there. Derek, I said slowly. What exactly did you see? I don't know, a shadow maybe, or... It sounds crazy. Tell me. It looked like you. Your exact shape, walking behind you, mimicking your movements. The room felt very cold. I pulled my blanket tighter. Are you sure? I asked. Are you absolutely sure? I know what I saw. He stood up, came to the bed, reached for my hand. Let me help you. We can figure this out together. I looked at his hand. His fingers were the right length. His smile was normal. His eyes blinked at regular intervals. But was it really him? Or was it something else, something that followed me home, something that knew how to wear his face? There was no way to know. That's what the cave had taken from me, not my sanity, not my sleep, but my ability to trust my own senses, to know what was real. I think you should leave, I said. Meg, please, I need to be alone. He started to argue, then seemed to think better of it. Okay, but I'm not giving up on you, on us. Whatever happened out there, we can get through it. After he left, I locked the door, put the chain on, went to the bathroom and looked at the mark on my shoulder again. It was bigger, the lines extending farther. I touched it. For the first time, it responded, sent a tingling sensation down my arm, warm and almost pleasant. That scared me more than anything. I called my mom. She answered on the third ring. Megan? Honey, it's late. I know, I'm sorry, and I needed to hear your voice. Is everything okay? Yeah, fine. I just miss you. I miss you too, sweetheart. A pause. This is about Andrew, isn't it? What makes you say that? It's almost his death anniversary. Next week. I've been thinking about him a lot too. I'd forgotten. 2 years next week since the accident. Mom, do you ever... I paused, trying to find the words. Do you ever feel like he's still here, like you can hear him? A long silence, then... Sometimes. Late at night, I think I hear him in his old room. But it's just the house settling. Memory playing tricks. But what if it wasn't? What if... Megan, Andrew is gone. I know that's hard to accept. God knows it's the hardest thing I've ever had to accept. But we can't let grief make us see things that aren't there. You're right. Sorry. I'm just tired. Get some sleep, honey. And maybe call your therapist. It might help to talk to someone. After we hung up, I sat on my couch, hugging a pillow. The apartment was too quiet, too empty. Andrew, I whispered. Are you there? Nothing, just the hum of the refrigerator, the distant sound of traffic, but then so faint I almost missed it. "I'm always here, Meg." I closed my eyes. Didn't respond. Didn't encourage it. Because I knew now with terrible certainty that whatever was speaking to me wasn't Andrew, wasn't Derek, wasn't anything human. It was something that wore familiar faces and spoke with familiar voices, something that lived in dark places and fed on grief and loneliness, something I'd invited in, and now it wasn't leaving. The mark on my shoulder tingled again, warmer this time. I rolled down my sleeve, covering it. Out of sight, but not out of mind. I haven't been back to Mammoth Cave, haven't spoken to Derek in 3 weeks. He stopped calling. Maybe he finally realized I wasn't the same person who went on that camping trip. Or maybe he'd never been Derek at all. I don't know. I'll never know. That's the thing about the cave. It doesn't take you. It doesn't kill you. It just makes you uncertain. Makes you question everything. Makes you wonder if what you're seeing, hearing, experiencing is real or just another trick. And uncertainty, I've learned, is worse than fear. Worse than pain. Because at least with fear you know what you're running from. I wrote this all down like my therapist suggested, tried to make sense of it. But I know it won't help. Some things can't be made sense of. Some things just are. Last night I woke up at 3 a.m., stood at my bedroom window looking out at the city lights, and there, across the street, standing under a street lamp was a figure, too far to see clearly. But I knew what it was, who it was wearing this time. It raised its hand in a wave. I closed the curtains and went back to bed. Tomorrow, I'll wake up and go to work. I'll smile at my coworkers, answer emails, pretend everything is normal. And maybe it is. Maybe I really did hallucinate everything. Maybe there's a rational explanation for all of it. But tonight in the dark, with the mark on my shoulder burning warm against my skin, I know the truth. The cave let me go, but it didn't let me leave. And somewhere in Kentucky, in the woods near Mammoth Cave, there's a cave entrance waiting, a lantern glowing and voices calling. Other people will hear them. Other people will follow. Other people will come back changed or not come back at all. And I'll be here wondering if I'm real or if I'm just another trick. Another face for the thing in the cave to wear. I guess I'll never know. I guess that's the point. Story 3. My name is Ryan Parker. The trail wasn't on any map and the red flags weren't paint. We'd been at Lake Powell for 3 days when Maya found it. The RV park sat on a peninsula jutting into the reservoir, red rock cliffs rising on 3 sides. It was early September after Labor Day, so most of the summer crowds had cleared out. Only 5 other RVs dotted the campground, all of them clustered near the boat launch at the far end. We'd chosen a spot on the opposite side, where the cliff face provided afternoon shade and a sense of privacy. Maya had been restless since we arrived. She worked in marketing for a tech company in Denver, the kind of job that demanded 60-hour weeks and constant connectivity. This trip was supposed to be her decompression. No emails, no calls, just red rocks and blue water. But she couldn't seem to settle. She'd wake up before dawn and go walking, returning with her sneakers dusty and her expression distracted. "There's something out there," she said on the morning of the 4th day. We were sitting outside the RV, drinking coffee in the shade. The September sun was already hot, turning the sandstone cliffs amber. A trail. It's not marked on any of the park maps. "Probably just an old access road," I said, "or a footpath locals use." She shook her head. "It's marked. Someone put up flags." "What kind of flags?" "Red ones, like surveying markers, but..." She paused, turning her coffee mug in her hands. "Come see it with me." I should have said no. We'd planned to take the kayaks out that morning, paddle along the shoreline where the water ran deep and clear. But Maya had that look in her eyes, the one that appeared when she'd fixed on something and wouldn't let go. "After breakfast," I said. The trail started behind our campsite, where a narrow gap split the cliff face. I'd noticed it before but assumed it was just a drainage channel, the kind of geological feature that riddled this landscape. Up close, it was wider than I'd thought, maybe 5 feet across. and the floor was packed dirt rather than the loose sand that covered everything else. The first red flag hung from a juniper branch about 20 yards in. It was fabric, not plastic, and it moved in the breeze with a wet, heavy sound. When we got closer, I saw why. "That's not paint," Maya said quietly. She was right. The fabric had been white once, but something had stained it a deep rust red. The color was uneven, darker in some places, almost black where it had pooled and dried. And the smell, faint, but unmistakable, copper and rot. "Someone's fucking with hikers," I said, though my voice lacked conviction. "Probably teenagers from Page, trying to make a ghost story." "Look at the date." A piece of painter's tape had been fixed to the bottom of the flag, numbers written in black marker. 08, 14 to 25. 3 weeks ago. "We should tell the Rangers," I said. But Maya was already walking deeper into the channel, her phone out, taking pictures. I followed because leaving her alone felt worse than whatever might be ahead. The channel curved and narrowed, the walls pressing in until we had to walk single file. More flags appeared, each one tied at intervals of about 30 feet. They all bore the same stains, the same dates in August. First the 14th, then the 17th, the 19th, the 23rd. Someone had been coming here regularly, marking a path that led... where? After 10 minutes, the channel opened into a small canyon, maybe 50 yards across. The walls here were smooth and rounded, carved by water over millennia. A dead juniper tree stood in the center, its twisted branches bleached white by the sun. More flags hung from its limbs, at least a dozen, all of them moving in unison, though I couldn't feel any wind. "This is too much," I said. "We're leaving." Maya was standing at the base of the tree, looking up at the flags. "Ryan, look at this." Something had been carved into the trunk. Not words, symbols. Circular patterns that spiraled inward, geometric shapes that hurt to look at too long. The wood around them was fresh, pale where the bark had been stripped away. This was recent work, done in the last few weeks. "Maya, we need to go. Now." She touched one of the symbols, tracing its edge with her finger. "They're beautiful. They're creepy as hell. Come on." She turned to look at me, and for a moment her face seemed wrong. The proportions off, like I was seeing her through distorted glass. Then she blinked, and it was just Maya again. My girlfriend of 2 years, the woman who sang off-key in the shower and cried during pet food commercials. "Okay," she said, "let's go back." We didn't speak during the walkout. The flag seemed to watch us pass, turning to track our movement, though the air remained still. When we emerged from the channel, the bright sunlight felt like a physical shock, and I realized I'd been holding my breath. That night, Maya couldn't sleep. I woke around 2 a.m. to find her sitting at the RV's dinette, her laptop open, the screen's glow painting her face blue-white. "Research?" I asked. "Local history. I'm trying to find out if this area has any significance." "You mean like Native American sites? Or anything else? Murders, disappearances, cult activity?" She scrolled through a page of search results. Lake Powell was created in the 60s when they dammed the Colorado River. It flooded hundreds of side canyons and buried a lot of old settlements. Mormon pioneers mostly, but also mining camps and who knows what else. "You think those flags have something to do with that?" "I think someone's using that trail for something. The dates, the symbols, it's deliberate, methodical." I sat down across from her. "We should still tell the Rangers." "And say what?" "We found some stained cloth and spooky drawings." She closed the laptop. "They'll think we're paranoid tourists. Better than doing nothing." But even as I said it, I knew we wouldn't report it. Because to report it meant admitting we'd been scared, and neither of us wanted to be that couple. The city people who got spooked by shadows and ran to the authorities. Maya went back to bed around 3. I stayed up, listening to the silence outside. The RV park had a quality to it at night that I'd noticed from the first evening, an absence of sound that felt deliberate, as if the land itself was holding its breath. No insects, no rustling of small animals, no distant coyote howls. Just wind occasionally, scraping sand against the RV's aluminum siding. When I finally slept, I dreamed of the dead tree. In the dream, the flags were faces stretched and distorted, mouths open in silent screams. Maya was there too, standing beneath the branches, her back to me. When she turned around, her eyes were wrong, not the color or the shape, but something about the way they moved, tracking me with an intensity that felt inhuman. I woke with the sun, heart pounding, to find Maya's side of the bed empty. The note on the counter said, "Went for a walk. Back soon." I checked my phone. 6:47 a.m. Not unusual for Maya, who'd always been an early riser. But something about the note bothered me. The handwriting was too precise, each letter carefully formed, unlike her usual scrawl. By 8 a.m., she still wasn't back. I walked the perimeter of the campground, checking the beach, the boat launch, the restrooms. Nothing. The couple in the RV nearest to ours, retirees from California with a golden retriever, said they'd seen her heading toward the cliff face around dawn. The channel. I grabbed my phone, a bottle of water, and a flashlight, though the day was already bright and hot. The juniper branch where the first flag had hung was empty now, the fabric gone. Same with the next marker and the next. Someone had removed them all. The canyon was empty too. The dead tree stood alone, its branches bare. Even the symbols carved into the trunk seemed fainter, as if they'd been sanded down or weathered by decades rather than hours. "Maya." My voice echoed off the smooth walls, distorting into something that didn't quite sound like my own words. I called her phone, straight to voicemail. I called again and again, walking the perimeter of the canyon, looking for any other exits. The walls were sheer, unclimbable. There was only one way in and out, the channel we'd entered through. By the time I got back to the RV, it was past noon. I called the ranger station, reported her missing. They took my information with the calm efficiency of people who dealt with lost tourists regularly. She'd probably just gotten disoriented, they said. The landscape here was confusing if you didn't know it. People walked in circles, lost track of time. They'd send someone out. The ranger arrived at 2 p.m. A woman in her 50s named Carla, with sun-weathered skin and eyes that had seen too many tragedies to get worked up over one more. She took notes as I described Maya's morning walk, the trail we'd found, the flags. When I mentioned the symbols, her pen paused. "What kind of symbols?" "Spirals, geometric patterns, carved into a dead tree." "Show me." We walked back to the channel. The flags were still gone, but I was certain I could find the canyon again, except the channel seemed longer this time, or maybe narrower. We walked for what felt like 20 minutes without reaching the opening. "How far in was it?" Carla asked. "Not this far. We should have reached it by now." We kept walking. The walls pressed closer. My phone lost signal, the bars dropping one by one until the screen showed nothing but a useless map with a blue dot floating in empty white space. Finally, we reached the canyon, but it was wrong. The dead tree was gone. No stump, no roots, just smooth sandstone where it should have been. The walls bore no carvings, no signs that anyone had been here recently. "Are you sure this is the right place?" Carla asked. I spun in a circle, trying to orient myself. "It has to be. There's only one canyon off this channel." "Mr. Parker, I've been working this area for 12 years. There are dozens of side canyons, maybe hundreds. They all look similar." But I knew. This was the place. I could feel it the way you feel someone watching you in a dark room, an animal certainty that had nothing to do with logic. We searched until the light started to fail, then returned to the RV park. Carla radioed for a full search team. They'd start at first light with dogs and drones, she said. In the meantime, I should try to rest. Most missing persons were found within the first 24 hours, usually embarrassed but unharmed. I didn't rest. I sat outside the RV, watching the channel's entrance, waiting for Maya to emerge. Around midnight, one of the other campers, a man in his 70s who'd been living in his RV full-time, stopped by with a thermos of coffee. "Your girlfriend," he said. "She go missing on a trail?" "Yeah. You see her this morning?" "Saw her at dawn walking toward the rocks, but I saw her come back too." My heart lurched. "When?" "Hour ago, maybe. Came walking out of that gap in the cliff. went into your RV. I was on my feet, moving toward the door before he finished speaking. The RV was dark. I fumbled with the handle, my hands shaking, and pushed inside. Maya sat at the dinette in the same position I'd seen her the previous night, laptop open, face illuminated by the screen. She looked up when I entered. "Hey," she said, "where have you been?" Relief crashed over me, followed immediately by anger. "Where have I been?" "Maya, you've been gone since dawn. I called the Rangers. They're organizing a search party." "What are you talking about?" "I was just on a walk. Got back an hour ago." "An hour ago? It's after midnight. You've been missing for almost 18 hours. She frowned, checking her phone. Then her frown deepened. "That can't be right." "What?" "My phone says it's 8:30 p.m. I looked at my own phone. 12:47 a.m. I showed her the screen. She stared at it, then at her phone, then back at mine. "I don't understand," she said. "I left at dawn, walked up into the rocks, and came back. It felt like maybe 3 hours." "Where did you go?" "Just around, exploring." "Did you go back to that canyon?" A pause. "What canyon?" "The one with the flags and the carved tree, where we were yesterday." She looked at me blankly. "Ryan, we went kayaking yesterday. We spent the whole day on the water." My stomach went cold. "Maya, that was 3 days ago. Yesterday we found that trail. The flags, the symbols. You were the one who wanted to go back. I think you're confused." "I'm not confused. You're the one who—" I stopped, forcing myself to breathe. "Where exactly did you walk today?" "Up into the rocks. There's a trail, narrow, like a crack in the cliff. I followed it for a while, found this interesting canyon." She trailed off, something flickering across her face. "There was a tree." "What kind of tree?" "Dead, twisted. The branches looked like hands reaching up." "Did you see the carvings, the symbols?" She shook her head slowly. "No symbols, just the tree and the silence. It was so quiet, Ryan. Like the whole world had stopped." I called Carla's number, told her Maya had returned. She'd call off the search, she said, but wanted to talk to Maya in the morning, take a statement. I agreed and hung up. Maya had gone into the bedroom. I found her sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at her hands. "Something's wrong," she said quietly. "What do you mean?" "I can't remember. The walk, the canyon, it's like trying to remember a dream. The harder I try to focus on it, the more it slips away." She looked up at me. "Did something happen to me out there?" I sat beside her, took her hands in mine. They were cold despite the warm night. "I don't know, but we're leaving tomorrow. First thing." "Okay." That night I woke to find her standing at the window, looking out at the cliff face. The moon was nearly full, bright enough to cast shadows. "Can't sleep?" I asked. She didn't turn around. "Do you hear that?" I listened. Nothing but wind. "Hear what?" "Singing. Like voices, but far away." I got up, stood beside her. The campground was empty, the other RVs dark. Beyond them, the cliff face rose black against the stars. "I don't hear anything, Maya." "It's beautiful," she whispered, "like a lullaby. Come back to bed." She turned to look at me, and in the moonlight I saw it again, that wrongness in her face, as if the proportions had shifted slightly. Her eyes were too wide, her smile too fixed. "Maya?" The expression vanished. She blinked, confused. "Sorry, I'm just tired." We went back to bed, but I didn't sleep. I lay there listening to her breathe, watching the shadows move across the ceiling, and trying not to think about the canyon or the tree or the symbols that had disappeared. In the morning, Maya seemed more like herself. She made coffee, hummed while cooking eggs, laughed at something on her phone. I wanted to believe it had been stress, exhaustion, the disorientation of losing time. But when Ranger Carla arrived to take her statement, Maya couldn't provide any useful information. The walk, the canyon, the hours between dawn and her return, all of it had blurred into vague impressions. Memory loss after a stressful event isn't uncommon, Carla said. But I'd recommend seeing a doctor when you get back to Denver. Make sure there wasn't a head injury or something else medical. After she left, I started packing up the RV. Maya sat outside, supposedly reading a book, but every time I glanced at her, she was staring at the cliff face. I need to go back, she said. I stopped coiling the water hose. What? To the canyon. I need to see it again. Absolutely not. We're leaving. Please, Ryan. Just one more time. I need to remember what happened. No. Whatever's going on out there. What's going on? She stood up, and there was something sharp in her voice, something that made me take a step back. You think something happened to me? That I'm crazy? I didn't say that. You're acting like I'm dangerous, like I'm not myself. Her hands were clenched at her sides. I just need to understand. 10 minutes, that's all I'm asking. I should have refused. Should have finished packing, gotten us on the road, put miles between us and Lake Powell. But the look in her eyes, desperate and pleading, broke down my resistance. 10 minutes, I said, and I'm coming with you. The channel seemed darker than before, though the sun was high overhead. Our footsteps echoed strangely, the sound returning wrong like recordings played backward. Maya walked ahead of me, her pace quick, purposeful, as if she knew exactly where she was going. The canyon appeared sooner than I expected, and the tree was there, not gone, not vanished, but present and solid, its white branches gleaming in the light. The flags hung from its limbs again, all of them moving in that windless rhythm. It's back, I said, all of it. Maya walked to the tree, placed both hands on its trunk. The symbols glowed faintly beneath her palms, pulsing with a light that seemed to come from within the wood itself. I remember now, she said. I came here yesterday. I touched the tree, and it showed me something. Showed you what? The people who put up the flags. They weren't marking a trail, Ryan. They were making offerings. Offerings to what? She turned to face me, and her smile was wrong, too wide, too knowing. To whatever lives in the deep places. Whatever was here before the lake, before the dam, before humans came to this land. Her voice had changed, dropping to a lower register. It's been waiting, sleeping in the drowned canyons, the buried settlements, the flags. They weren't paint, they were blood, human blood. Each one a gift, a payment. I backed away. Maya, we need to leave. Right now. But I'm home, she said. This is where I'm supposed to be. She moved toward me, not walking but gliding, her feet not quite touching the ground. I ran. The channel seemed endless, stretching out ahead of me no matter how fast I moved. Behind me I could hear her following. Not footsteps, but something else. A wet dragging sound like cloth pulled through mud. Ryan, don't leave me. It was Maya's voice, but stretched thin, modulated wrong. I didn't look back. I just ran, my lungs burning, my heart hammering against my ribs. When I finally burst out of the channel, the sunlight seemed dimmer than it should have been. I ran to the RV, fumbled with the keys, locked myself inside. Through the window, I watched the gap in the cliff face, waiting for her to emerge. Nothing, just stone and shadow and the hot September air. I called Carla, explained that Maya had gone back to the canyon and something was wrong. She wasn't herself. Please send help. The ranger's voice was patient but firm. Had I been drinking? Using drugs? No, I insisted. Something in that canyon had affected Maya, changed her. Carla said she'd send someone out. In the meantime, I should stay in the RV, keep hydrated, try to stay calm. I hung up and sat at the dinette, staring at Maya's laptop. She'd left it open, the screen showing her search history. Pages about Lake Powell, about the settlements flooded when the reservoir was created. One article about a Mormon community called Bonner's Ferry, drowned in 1963. Another about a series of disappearances in the early 20th century, before the dam, when this was still wild country accessible only by river. At the bottom of her history was a page I didn't remember seeing before. It was a scanned document, yellow with age, written in cramped handwriting. A journal entry from 1887, found the canyon today. The Navajo guide refused to enter, saying it belonged to the old gods, the ones who lived in the earth before the world was made. I paid him extra to wait. Inside, the air was strange, cold, thick, like breathing water. At the center stood a tree, already dead though it had no right to be, this deep in the rock where water never reached. The branches were wrong. They moved. I left markings on the trunk to prove I'd been there, but when I looked back from the canyon entrance, the marks were gone. I will not return. The RV's door rattled. I looked up. Maya stood outside, her face pressed against the window, her breath fogging the glass. She wasn't smiling anymore. Her expression was neutral, blank, like a mask waiting to be worn. "Let me in, Ryan. You're not Maya. I am. I'm just more than I was." And she tapped on the glass. "Open the door. We need to leave." "I'm not opening anything. You can't stay in there forever." "I can stay until the ranger comes." "The ranger won't come. No one comes here anymore. This is a dead place. It died when they flooded it, and now it wants to be alive again." Her voice was patient, almost kind. "It chose me because I was open, because I was searching, but it can choose you too if you let it. I'm not letting anything in." She pressed both palms flat against the window. Where her skin made contact, the glass began to frost, ice spreading outward in crystalline patterns. "You will," she said. "Eventually. Because you love me, and you won't be able to stand watching me out here alone while you hide inside." She was right. That was the worst part. Even knowing what she'd become, seeing her out there, her face, her eyes, her voice. I felt the pull, the urge to unlock the door, to trust that maybe I was wrong, maybe this was just stress or heat exhaustion or some rational explanation. The sun dropped toward the horizon. The ranger still hadn't arrived. Maya sat on the ground outside the RV, waiting with inhuman patience. Occasionally she would stand and walk the perimeter, her fingers trailing along the metal siding, leaving frost patterns that melted slowly in the heat. As darkness fell, I heard the singing Maya had mentioned, distant, wordless, coming from the direction of the canyon. It was beautiful and terrible, harmonies that shouldn't exist woven together into a sound that made my teeth ache. Maya stood, tilting her head to listen. Then she walked toward the cliff face, disappearing into the darkness. I waited until I couldn't see her anymore, then unlocked the door and slipped outside. The keys to the truck were in my pocket. If I could reach it, I could drive to the ranger station, bring back help, force them to understand what was happening here. The truck was parked 20 yards away. I ran. Behind me, the singing grew louder, not from the canyon now, but from everywhere. The rocks, the sand, the air itself vibrating with that impossible harmony. I reached the truck, jerked open the door, jammed the key in the ignition. The engine turned over. Died. Turned over again. Died. In the rearview mirror, I saw her walking toward me. Not Maya's walk. She moved differently now, with a grace that was almost liquid, as if she was learning how to operate a human body. I tried the engine again. It sputtered, caught, died. She reached the truck, opened the passenger door, slid inside. Up close, in the dashboard's dim glow, I could see the changes more clearly. Her skin had taken on a faint translucence, as if I could see through to something beneath. Her eyes didn't reflect light the way they should. "You can't leave," she said. "It's too late for that." "What did they do to you, the ones who made the offerings?" They understood. What lives here, what's always lived here, it doesn't want to hurt anyone. It just wants to be remembered. To be acknowledged. The dam tried to bury it, to drown it under 1,000,000 acre-feet of water. But you can't kill something that's part of the land itself. It just waits. And sometimes when someone comes who can hear the singing. She reached out, touched my face with fingers that felt too cold, too smooth. "It finds a way back. I won't let you take Maya. Maya's still here. She's just shared now. And she's happy, Ryan. Happier than she's been in years. All that stress, that exhaustion, it's gone. She's part of something bigger than herself. That's not happiness, that's possession. Is there a difference? She tilted her head, studying me. You spend your whole life possessed by something. Your job, your anxiety, your need for control. At least this possessor knows peace. The singing swelled, and I felt it then. The pull she'd described, the urge to give in, to let go of everything and just listen. It would be so easy. No more decisions, no more fear. Just the singing and the darkness and the weight of eternity. No, I said, and started the engine again. This time it caught. I threw the truck into reverse, not caring that Maya or the thing wearing her face was still in the passenger seat. The tires spun in the sand, found purchase, and we lurched backward. You can't run from this, she said calmly. It's in me now, and if you love me, it's in you too. You've heard the singing. You've felt the pull. It's only a matter of time. I drove, out of the campground onto the main road, headlights cutting through the desert darkness. In the passenger seat, Maya sat quietly, watching the landscape flow past. After 10 minutes, she reached over and turned on the radio. Static hissed from the speakers, and beneath it, I could hear the singing. I switched it off. She switched it on. We did this 3 times before I gave up and let it play. Where are we going? She asked. Home. Denver. You're seeing a doctor. A doctor won't help. This isn't a disease. She rolled down the window, letting the night air stream in. But okay, we'll go home. We'll pretend everything's normal. Maybe you'll even convince yourself that nothing happened here. People are good at that, ignoring what they can't explain. You're going to fight it, I said. Whatever's in you, you're going to push it out. Why would I want to? For the first time in my life, I'm not tired, I'm not anxious, I don't wake up at 3 a.m. wondering if I'm wasting my life. I finally understand what I'm supposed to do. Which is? Spread the singing. She looked at me, and in the dashboard's glow, her smile was radiant and terrible. Help others hear what I've heard. There are so many people suffering, Ryan. So many who need the peace I've found. I drove faster. The highway stretched ahead, empty and black. Behind us, Lake Powell's water gleamed in the moonlight, covering the drowned canyons and the settlements and whatever had lived there long before humans gave it names. We reached Page around 2 a.m. I pulled into a gas station, bright fluorescent lights driving back the darkness. Inside, a teenage clerk played on his phone behind bulletproof glass. I went to him, tried to explain that my girlfriend needed help, that something had happened to her at Lake Powell. He nodded along with the bored expression of someone who'd heard every tourist story, every complaint about the heat or the distance or the lack of cell service. When I went back outside, Maya was gone. The truck sat where I'd left it, door open, keys in the ignition, but the passenger seat was empty. I searched the gas station, the parking lot, the dark street beyond, called her name until my voice cracked. The clerk watched through his window with mild interest but didn't come out to help. At dawn, I drove back to the campground. The RV sat where we'd left it, door open, interior stripped of our belongings. Someone had been inside and taken everything. Clothes, food, phones, even the sheets from the bed. The other campers were gone too. The RV park was empty, just vacant lots and disconnected electrical hookups. At the far end, near the boat launch, I found tire tracks in the sand. They led to the water's edge, then disappeared. Ranger Carla's number went to voicemail. The ranger station, when I drove there, was closed despite the sign saying it opened at 8. Through the window, I could see files scattered across the floor, as if someone had left in a hurry. I returned to the canyon one last time. The channel was still there, the gap in the cliff still accessible. But when I followed it, I found nothing. No canyon, no tree, no flags. Just solid rock, as if the passage had sealed itself shut. On the drive back to Denver, I played the radio constantly, scanning through channels, listening for the singing beneath the static. I never heard it. But sometimes in the silence between stations I thought I caught something. A harmony that shouldn't exist. Voices calling from a place that predated human language. Maya's parents filed a missing person report. The police searched Lake Powell, interviewed me 3 times, treated me with the polite suspicion reserved for the last person to see someone alive. But they found nothing. No body, no evidence of foul play, just another disappearance in a landscape that had been swallowing people for centuries. I go back sometimes, not to Lake Powell. I can't bring myself to return there. But I drive the desert highways, stopping at small towns and campgrounds, listening. Other people have heard the singing. I can see it in their eyes, that distant look, that pull toward something they can't name. Some of them are fighting it. Others have already given in. Last week, I saw her, or someone who looked like her. She was standing outside a gas station in Moab, talking to a couple with a hiking map, pointing toward the backcountry. They thanked her and drove off. She watched them go, then turned and looked directly at me. Her smile hadn't changed. Too wide, too knowing. I drove away without stopping. At night I dream of the dead tree, its branches reaching up from beneath the water, breaking through the surface of the reservoir. In the dreams I can hear the singing clearly, and it's not terrible anymore. It's peaceful, inviting. All I'd have to do is drive back, follow the channel, touch the symbols carved into the trunk. But I don't. I stay in Denver, in my apartment with its locked door and curtained windows. I tell myself I'm being paranoid, that Maya is fine, that what I saw at Lake Powell was stress or heat exhaustion or some combination of factors that have a rational explanation. Sometimes I almost believe it. Then I hear the singing, faint, distant but growing closer each day, and I remember her face pressed against the RV window, her breath fogging the glass, her voice patient and kind as she explained how it would end. You will let me in. Eventually. Because you love me. She was right. I'm running out of reasons to keep the door closed. Last night, I found red fabric tied to my apartment's doorknob. No date this time, just the stain, rust red and dark, smelling of copper and rot. The flags have found me, which means she has too. I don't know how much longer I can resist. The singing is constant now, woven into traffic noise and conversation, and the hum of electricity in the walls. It's beautiful. It's calling me home. Maybe tomorrow, I'll finally answer. My name is Ryan Parker. The trail wasn't on any map, and the red flags weren't paint, and God help me, I'm starting to understand what they mean.